You're watching Pyro Media Network.
We just keep on walking, but never really getting nowhere. It's like we keep on talking, but never really saying nothing. On different sides, on different times, stuck in a ways we ain't changing. Can't read your mind, and I've really tried. You won't let me in, like we're strangers. Say opposites, supposed to attract, but we both can tell it feels often. Should let it go, but somehow we fold, and it happens way too often. We're so different, we're so different. How can we act but we make it fit in? It's just like we're so different, we're so different. I don't quite understand you, you don't get me.
Thank you for tuning in. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We hope your experience is fruitful. Please feel free to visit our website to find out how you can join our growing family. While we are loading your experience, please do us a quick favor and hit that like button from whichever platform you're watching or listening on. Also, share so others may enjoy as well. And we hope you would consider hitting that subscribe or follow button so you can check out more of our amazing content. All right, let's start the show.
I think a lot of us are walking around with broken hearts and we're calling it other things. We're calling it anxiety. We're calling it self-love. We're calling it empathy. We're calling it boundaries. And sometimes those things are real growth. But sometimes they're just grief we haven't sat with yet. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to my show. I have missed y'all. Now, if you're thinking, what do you mean you missed us? The show's been going on as planned. We took a break from Christmas, my producer and I, so we haven't been recording any shows. And so for me, it's coming back to the show, although you haven't missed me a whole lot or you haven't missed seeing me. So I want to welcome you back to the show. Tonight, before we start the show, I want you to pause, hit like on the video, hit subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so that you don't miss when we drop the show, which drops every Wednesday. And so for those of you who've been following the show, commenting, and telling other people about the show, thank you. So I wanted to do a show tonight because I wanted to talk about something that I experienced with somebody that is very dear to me and who may not be here much longer. And I told her that I definitely wanted to tell her story. So tonight's show is in dedication to one of my really good friends' mom. For those of you who know me, not just on YouTube, but you know me on TikTok, and you know me from Facebook, and you just know me. You know how I feel about Steve and his mom. And so I wanted to do this show tonight because I think a lot of us are walking around with broken hearts. And like I said at the top of the show, we're calling it a whole lot of things than what it really is, which is a broken heart. And I want to talk about broken hearts, not the dramatic kind, not the kind that need to be rescued, but the quiet ones, the ones we're carrying around while we tell ourselves we're fine. I think a lot of us are just walking around hurt and calling it something else. I was at dinner with Steve and his mom at her place, and we're sitting at the table. And I don't know why I thought to ask the question, but I asked her, was her husband her first love or her true love? And I remember her saying to me, no. But it wasn't that she said no, it's how she said no. And she got really quiet. And I was like, really? Because Steve's mom comes from a time and a generation where a lot of women married young, they had their children young, and maybe they married the first boy they ever loved. And so I don't know why. I just thought that was her story, that she married the first boy she ever loved. And so when she said no, I got intrigued. And I said, oh, who was your first love? And she told me his name. And immediately I perked up because she's now in her 80s, and she, like a lot of women are deciding to live alone and live by herself. So while she's still legally married to her husband, they're living separate lives, right? And so I said, well, who was the boy? So she tells me the name of the gentleman that she was her first love and the man she truly loved. And so I said, well, is he still alive? And then she got really quiet and got emotional. And she said, no. And I said, when did he die or when did he pass? And she knew when he passed. She knew where he lived. And I asked her just this question. Why didn't you end up with him? Why didn't you marry him? What happened? And she said to me, she said, we were young. And when he wanted to get married, I was younger than him. I wasn't ready to be married. And then he went off to, I think she said he went off to the military, and she went off to live her life. And she goes, and then it just never sunk, it just never happened. We never came back together again. But he was the first boy I love. And I was thinking, here she is, almost 90 years old, sitting in this apartment that she's decided to live by herself. And this man still has the ability to have this kind of hold on her. And I remember walking away from that encounter and thinking, how many people are walking around with broken hearts and calling it something else? How many people we see in our workplace, in our family dynamics, in our, the grocery store or the mall, wherever you encounter people, how many of them are just brokenhearted people? And those broken hearts are showing up as anxiety, or they show up as hyper empathy, or they show up as I'll never go back, or I love myself now, or I'm healed. All the different ways that broken hearts show up, because until I had asked that question, I don't think I ever even considered that Steve's mom wasn't married to the man she had ever loved. It never dawned on me. And sometimes when broken hearts show up as hyper empathy, or I'm healed, or I've moved on, or I've grown, sometimes all of that is true, especially if you've left something that was harmful. Leaving is often the bravest thing you can do. You're not like hacking your growth, you're just complicating it. And so even if you're leaving a bad situation, right, especially in the instances of where you are walking away from a domestic violence situation or an abusive situation, that's brave, and you should be, commended for that. But just because you left something that was hurtful to you or harmful to you doesn't mean that you didn't love who you love, doesn't mean you're still not mourning the idea of who that person was, or what that love was, or what that love could be. Walking away from something that harms you is good. But walking away doesn't mean what's left behind isn't grief. And I think we live in a culture now that tells us, especially if you're a woman walking away from an abusive relationship, that tells us that we are so better off and we shouldn't think about those person and, what a loser the guy was. And, any man that's abusing you is in fact a loser. But just because you're walking away because it's the right thing for you, just because you're walking away because it will keep you safe and in some instances alive, doesn't mean what's left behind isn't grief. And I think a lot of us are hiding from our grief. A boundary doesn't automatically mean a healed heart. You can set a boundary while your heart is still broken. You can set a boundary while you still miss the person that person was, because a lot of us have fallen in love with people, the fullness of who they are. Maybe they were kind, maybe they were empathetic, maybe they saw you in a way that the love before, or the man before, or the woman before didn't see you. And just because you're leaving that behind doesn't mean you're not still ruminating on the memories of who that person was, right? Like there's so many reasons why people change. There's so many reasons why people are different in relationship and in love. There's so many reasons why we can't be with the people that we love. but it doesn't mean that we don't love them. And I think a lot of us are rushing through our pain, we're rushing through our grief. Speaking about Steve, when Lee died, who was one of my best friends and Steve's husband, I remember saying to Steve, because grief is something that's so uncomfortable in our culture and in our society. And it doesn't matter if that grief is the loss of love or that grief is the loss of a partner, grief, the loss of a spouse, a child, a parent. We live in a society that requires us to get through the grief and get through it quickly because life is happening, work is happening, kids have to be fed, the bills have to be paid. All the things are still happening in our lives. And so because life is still happening to us, we're rushed through grief because who has time to sit and feel when rent has to be paid? Who has time to sit and feel when the kids have to be fed? Who has time to sit and feel when life is moving all around you? The country is moving. The job is moving. Other relationships are moving, right? Like nothing we have is static. And so we rush through the grief. Like broken hearts don't disappear because the relationship ends. And that was so evident to me in sitting across from this 80-year-old woman who was still emotional about a man she had not seen, loved, or been with in over 50 years. Over 50 years. And then I started to think how much of how her marriage with Steve's stepdad, how much of her marriage and how she showed up in her marriage was impacted by what she felt for somebody else that she truly loved. How much of your relationships, your current relationships, your current marriage is impacted by the relationships of the people you couldn't be with, the people that you love, the people that broke your heart. And I wonder how many of us are just running from the feeling, not the person, not the situation, but the feeling of heartbreak, the feeling of loss, the feeling of grief. How many of us are just running, pretending it's not there, pretending we don't feel it, pretending we don't miss them, pretending we don't love them? When I walked away from that meeting, I remember going out to eat, and I went out by myself, and it's something that I encourage people to do. And I was sitting at the bar, sitting at the table. And as I was sitting there, I started to look at people differently. I started to look at people's eyes because I wanted to see, could I see something behind the eyes? Could I see something behind the smile? Can I see something behind what looked like happy people enjoying a meal, enjoying a drink, enjoying each other's company? Could I see behind the eyes that what I was watching was an act? And not because they didn't enjoy the company that they were with, not because they didn't enjoy the people they were with, not because they weren't really having a good time, not because the music wasn't good or the drink wasn't good or the food wasn't good or even that the company wasn't good, but because they were doing that thing to try to run away from the feeling. A lot of us don't sit with grief. And the hardest grief that we don't sit with is heartbreak. Because heartbreak feels like weakness. Heartbreak feels like, why don't you get over it? Why don't you move on? But I think a lot of us need to just sit with the feeling. Let it move through your body. Admit it to ourselves. Because we won't even admit it. We won't admit that we are grieving, that we're grieving love, that we're grieving loss, that we're grieving a future we thought we would have with somebody, a future that we had imagined. Because one of the things I said to her, I said, what do you think, or what do you think your life would have looked like? And she just smiled. She said, I think I would have been with somebody that I didn't have to think or question, did they love me? Because again, Steve's mom is from a generation where women had to be married, right? Like marriage wasn't about love for a lot of women in that generation. They had to be married. They had to be married to have a car. They had to be married to be able to be in a house. They had to be married because their husbands were the one working. And so I said, did you wonder what you like? She said, I think I would have been with somebody, or my life would have been with a man that I wouldn't have to question was love. I wouldn't have felt duty to my marriage. I would have felt happy to be in one. And I just remember in that conversation just being stunned by it. And then it made me go back into my own life, into my own love stories, right? Some of us have loved once, and some of us have loved more than once. And some of us have loved people that we are no longer with. And the reasons may vary why that is. But it made me sit and think about who was in my life that I've loved and I didn't grieve because I needed to be strong. I needed to be capable. I didn't want to show anybody that I needed them or missed them. God forbid. God forbid that I miss you. I would rather count sand on the beach, right? Because a lot of that is happening with us too, right? You want to be strong. You want to be the one that I'll never let them see me sweat. I'll never let anybody know. And I just think we're masking. You think you're being strong, but the reality is you're just masking. And when we mask, that shows up as irritability. You ever just been irritable? You see somebody else in love, and now you're irritable. Ugh. Or you're numb. You're just emotionally numb. Black women, this is us. You're over functioning. You're now going for your 5th degree, sis. At this point, you're going to be a doctor. Like you are on your 5th degree. You're over functioning. And then I thought about that. I thought about how many Black women who are running off to school to get a bunch of degrees. How much of that is just masking and numbing broken hearts? Don't shoot me. How many of you that are just running out and getting degree after degree after degree after certification, another degree, another certification? How much of that is masking broken hearts? The Black man that people tell you is beneath your pay grade, sis. Don't be dating no bums, but you actually love him. Now, I'm not talking about the bums that need a warm place to lay. But even if that's the person you love, how many Black women, high functioning, another degree, another cert, how many of you are doing that because you're trying to mask a broken heart? You can't marry him, sis. He's going to resent you, sis. Don't hear what I'm not saying. All of that may be true. And you moving on may be the right thing. But you moving on doesn't mean your heart isn't broken. And rather than sit with the heartache of that loss, you're over functioning. How many of you crystal girlies, you spiritual girlies, how many of you are just spiritual bypassing for a broken heart? How many of you crystal girlies are just spiritual bypassing for a broken heart? How many of you self-help gurus, life coaches, are life coaching other people to not deal with your own broken heart? Now, if this message ain't for you, it ain't for you. You stay out of the comment section. But I want us to think about, are we hiding broken hearts? Are we hiding them in our degrees? Are we hiding them in our certification? Are we hiding them in our crystals? Are we hiding them in our life coach business? How many of us are just masking broken hearts? How many of us are calling it self empathy? This is my empathy for myself. And now, we talk about empathy over here. Develop cards for you. There's a scorecard. There's an empathy scorecard where you measure how much empathy you have for people outside of you. There is a self-empathy scorecard where you measure the empathy you have for yourself. So this is not me saying that you shouldn't have empathy for yourself. This is not me saying that you shouldn't have empathy for other people. But how many of us are hiding broken hearts underneath empathy, hyper empathy? And maybe the reason why you're so hyper empathy with people is because you are masking that you need that empathy for yourself, that you need somebody to tell you that it is okay, that your heart is broken, even if the guy isn't right for you, even if the timing is wrong, even if the relationship cannot work and should not work, even if the relationship cannot work and should not work. That all of that can be true and your heart can still be broken. All of that can be true and your heart can still be broken. What are you masking behind your broken heart? Do you want to get to Steve's mom age, to be in her 80s, and find that you've looked up, you've lived a life, you've let an opportunity pass because you were told you shouldn't be with this person, maybe for superficial reasons, like you don't share the same race, you don't share the same religion, you aren't separate genders? Do you want to look up and be in your 80s and say, we have no idea what happens when this all ends? And I could have spent the majority of my life choosing the person I really loved over the expectation of the people around me. Do you want to be Steve's mom? Do you want to be Steve's mom? And if the person you love, you can't be with, and the reasons don't matter to me, if the person you love that you can't be with, can you stop rushing through the grief of that loss? Can you sit with that feeling in your body? You know that saying, the only way through it is through it. The only way through it is through it. And we're trying to go all around the world to not get through it. But that's a question I want you to think about. That's a question I want you to think about. Do I want to get to 80, 90, 70, hell, 60? Right? Your girl's pulling up on 50 real quick. And I have ideas for how I want my life to go at 50. I want the second half of my life to be one that I have intentionally chosen for myself, without the expectation of family, friends, and to some degree, even my children. I've done my job. I've raised them into adulthood. So the second half of my life, I want it to be about every decision for myself. And I think I don't think you can truly move on and create the life that you want for yourself until you address your broken heart. And that broken heart may not even be from a romantic love. That broken heart may be from a platonic love. That broken heart may be from a breakdown in your family dynamics, mom, dad, child. It may not be romantic love. But I do find that a lot of people are walking around with broken hearts from a romantic love that they refuse to speak. Because clarity is not cruelty. Clarity is not cruelty, and grief isn't weakness. Grief isn't weakness. I think there was a quote that said, grief is the evidence that love once lived there. Grief is the price we pay for love. If you've loved anybody, if you love somebody, and the thought of losing somebody, you ever think about somebody that you love that comes to mind? Maybe it's your children, maybe it's your husband, maybe it's your wife, maybe it is your parents, and the very thought of losing them makes you sad and grieve. So I want you to remember that grief isn't weakness. Grief is the price we pay for love. When we come back from the commercial break, we'll talk a little bit more about one of the practices that I do to heal a broken heart. See you after the break.
Hey, how y'all doing? Real quick, this is Daryl Walter, host of the Daryl Walter Show. I know. And you are watching Pyro Media Network.
Hey, it's Dr. Nicole D. Vick from Dr. Victorious, and you're watching Pyro Media Network.
What's going on, y'all? It's Kwame Speaks from Kwame Speaks Live, and you're watching Pyro Media Network.
Hey, it's Pastor Kim from It's Just Kim Live Show, and you're watching Pyro Media Network.
Welcome back. Okay, so I talked about honoring the grief, honoring how you feel, not walking around with a broken heart and pretending that it's okay, pretending you don't feel. So I told you when we come back from the break, I was going to tell you some of the things that I have done to heal my own broken heart. One of the things that I do to honor, because to me, I use the word heal, but I want to say the thing that I do to honor my broken heart without letting it drive my life or drive my decisions or stop me from making decisions or stop me from the possibility of love is I say it out loud. I speak my pain out loud. I use my voice. What we are afraid to speak, we are afraid to confront. And what we are afraid to confront, we will never heal. What we are afraid to speak, we are afraid to confront. And what we are afraid to confront, we will never heal. So I speak my pain out loud. And sometimes that looks like getting my phone, turning on my voice note and talking to it, getting the words out of my body and out of my mouth. Now, I'm not as spiritual as some people, right? But I do believe in the throat chakra. And I think the things that we are afraid to speak get stuck here. It gets stuck here. And anything that you are afraid to speak, it doesn't just stop with the broken heart. Then you're afraid to speak up for yourself In workplace situations, you're afraid to speak up for yourselves. In friendship relationships and dynamic, you're afraid to speak up for yourselves. In bookstores, and then you end up buying the white lady her books. Did we all see that TikTok? Or just those of us who peruse the TikTok or live on TikTok? What we are afraid to speak, we are afraid to confront. And what we are afraid to confront, we're afraid to heal. So one of the things that I do is I speak out loud. I say out loud, what is happening in my body? What do I feel? Why do I feel it? And sometimes I speak that I wish I didn't feel it. But I allow it to leave my body. And then once I speak it, I sit with the sensation of it. What does it feel like now that it's in the atmosphere, now that it's out? It's no longer trapped in my head. It's no longer trapped in my body. It's in the atmosphere. What does it feel like? And sometimes it feels overwhelming. Sometimes it feels overwhelming. Sometimes it feels suffocating. More times than not, it has always felt scary. It felt scary to say the thing that I tried to hide, to say the thing that I never wanted to speak because I didn't want to feel it. I didn't want to love them. I didn't want to have to think about them. I didn't want them to be in my orbit. I didn't want to remember who we were. I didn't want to remember who I thought we would be, the life I thought we would have. So I speak it, and then I sit with, what does it feel like? And sometimes it feels like failure. Sometimes it feels like failure. Why couldn't I just be who they needed me to be? Why did I have to change? Why did I have to say it? Why did I have to be that way? Sometimes it feels like failure. Sometimes it feels like self-flagellation. Sometimes it feels like I am beating myself or someone is beating me. I don't try to fix the feeling. I don't try to fix that. I don't try to run away from that. Sometimes that looks like just silent tears. Sometimes that looks like sadness. Sometimes it looks like tiredness in my body. Sometimes it looks like sleep. My mother used to say before she passed, when she would come in the room, and I swear that woman was wise beyond her years, and you'd be laying down in the bed or you'd be sad, and my mother would say, what are you laying down for? What are you sleeping for? What's wrong with you? And she wasn't asking what's wrong with you in a physical way. She was asking what was wrong with us emotionally, because the truth is, when we are sad, it shows up, and the people closest to us know. And we would be different people in the world. We'd be different people to ourselves, different people to our children, different people to our friendships, different people to our workplace. If some of us would just acknowledge that we're going through a broken heart, or we have a broken heart, that sometimes that partying is, and that drinking and the smoking is to forget. It's to forget. It's to not feel. It's to not engage. It's to not deal with. And the thing about grief, much like love, is that it's inconvenient. Sometimes that grief shows up at the most inconvenient time. It's when you finally got the job. Yes, sis, you finally got the job. And then you go into work every day. And as you accomplish more, it just reminds you of who you don't get to share this with. Bruh, you've been working your ass off to get that promotion, only to buy the house and think about the woman who will never occupy it with you. Sometimes that's how it shows up. And so when you are feeling all of the emotions of brokenness, of sadness, don't fight the feeling. Now, one of the things that I did with a boyfriend I had, and my heart was broken. It was the first time I'd experienced a broken heart. And I spent a lot of time pretending it didn't hurt, pretending I was better off. And the truth was, I was better off. I mean, listen, that guy, like the duddest of duds, right? Like when I think about the kind of life I want to live and have lived, there was no way I was going to be able to get that with that person. But again, I said at the beginning of the show that just because you are grieved, just because you've made the right decision, doesn't mean that grief isn't present. Grief is still there. And I think I'd spent like maybe 2 years trying to not have the conversation, pretending it didn't matter, pretending I didn't feel it, pretending it was fine, pretending it was okay. Until one day I just said, what would happen if I just said it? If I just told them? Not that I wanted to be back with them. That was not it. The life I wanted to live, I went on and got married and had my kids and had a pretty good life. The life I wanted to live, there's no way that person was going to be able to create it for me. And we didn't work. But again, just because something doesn't work doesn't mean grief isn't present. And I remember I saw him one time and I literally just said to myself, just say it. Say the thing out loud. Just say it. And we had a moment to talk. He'd come over and we started talking. And you know how the ex do. They do the thing where, oh, I love you. You're the best thing. Blah 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 blah. We were so good together. Blah 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 blah. And I knew. I'm like, we were good together when we were together. But the people we were trying to be in our lives, we wouldn't have been good together. We would have ended up hating each other, and we would have never been to this place many, 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 many years later to sit down at a dinner table and have dinner and talk and still laugh and joke. If we stayed together, we would have been the people who hate each other. And I remember saying to him, I think I'll always love you. But always loving you is not the same as wanting to be with you. But I didn't want to continue to tell myself and him or pretend that this heartbreak wasn't there, that the pain wasn't there, that I didn't miss the life that I had imagined we would live, even though we didn't, I like intellectually I knew. And for some of you who are watching this show, intellectually, the person you love, you can't be with, you should not be with. And you've made the right decision for yourself. But the grief is there. And I hope that if you've watched this show, that you honor the grief, that you speak it out loud, that you sit with the sensation and you don't try to fix the feeling. And that the only way through it is through it, to go through it. You don't have to pretend. You can be honest, even if the honesty is with yourself. Even if the honesty is with yourself. I asked Steve's mom, did she have any regrets? And I think when she looks at the totality of her life, what the man she married was able to give her, the life he was able to give her and her son, because Steve was not his biological child, I don't think she lives a life full of regrets in making the decision she made. But I think she wished that she would have told the truth about the heartbreak. That she wasn't at 85 sitting in her apartment, still emotional about a man that she loved, that she could not be with. And that until I'd asked her the question, she'd never told anybody. that she was sitting with a broken heart. And so I hope if you're watching this show and you are sitting with a broken heart, that you honor that you speak it out loud, that you sit with the feeling, and that you come out on the other side, and that it is okay to have loved the person you loved, even if you can't be with them right now, even if the relationship would not have worked. It's okay to have loved the person you've loved and to honor it. And you don't have to mask it with hyper empathy. You don't have to mask it with overproducing. You don't have to mask it with alcohol. You don't have to mask it with drugs. You can simply feel it. And I will tell you, sometimes it doesn't feel good in the body when you allow yourself to feel it, but you come out on the other side of it. You come out on the other side of it. And I told Steve's mom, I said, you know, this story has made me want to tell unrequited love stories. People who have love stories that maybe you can't say out loud. You know, you're not me. You're not going to get on camera. You're not going to tell your story. But if you want to share your story, I would love to hear it. I would love to hear it. I was telling my producer, I said, I think the unrequited love story may be a segment on the show, because I want to help people honor the loves that they could not be with, but want to have a place to tell their story. So if you have an unrequited love story, drop a comment, and I will reach out to you. And if you'd love for your love story to be a segment on the show, I'll be more than happy to tell your story so that you can see it, you can hear it back to you, and then you can feel it in your body. I want to thank you all for watching the show tonight. We will be back next week. And again, I want to hear your love stories. I want you to honor your love so that you can heal your broken heart. And you don't have to walk around feeling more empowered. You just need to be more honest.
Thank you for watching Pyro Media Network. For more information, please visit pyromedianetwork.com.